morning. As Yusuf mentioned, my name is Donna Kopel. I'm here from Dubai American Academy. I've been at Dubai American Academy for 6 years. I originally started in KG1. I've also taught KG2 there and second grade, which is what I'm teaching currently. I'm also in charge of K5 literacy at the school, and obviously that's my passion because I'm here today. This presentation is going to focus mainly on primary and elementary strategies, so I apologize if there's any middle school or high school teachers here. This isn't really going to be as helpful for you, but it's fun anyway because it's really colorful. So I'm going to be presenting today on how we organize our classrooms to support teaching and learning of literacy. And this isn't just the teacher side of the organization. This is organization in the sense that you're setting both yourself and your students up for success. It's organization to support differentiation, it's organization to keep the peace, it's organization to keep your students busy even when you can't speak or interact with them directly. So the first bit that I'm going to talk about very briefly is teacher systems. I'm assuming most of you are teachers. As teachers, we tend to have systems that we like to keep ourselves organized. The paper and pencil system I've been using for years. If you're ever looking for templates or ways to keep your reading and writing notes on students organized, if you don't know what Pinterest is, it is a delightful collection of just about anything under the sun, from soup recipes to teacher resources to some of these beautiful posters that you see around the classroom. It's a great resource to find teacher-to-teacher connections, to get templates for both your organization and student organization that are already created, so you don't really have to reinvent the wheel. You can use what someone else has found to be effective. If you are fortunate enough in your school or personally to have an iPad or some other form of tablet, I'm a big fan of several apps that I use to keep myself organized, just with my own notes and assessments. My favorite is Confer. It basically allows me to take individual notes on students, notes of groups of students at the same time. Because it's electronic, I don't lose it, I don't spill my cup of coffee on it, and it never gets dusty. And it's always there year after year, so I can refer back, I can always keep it with me. But again, this is if you're lucky enough to have a tablet like that. If not, I used the paper and pencil system for years. I was all about binders and notepads. It is very doable and not as complicated as it may sound. I'm not going to go into this in any more detail than that. If you're interested in seeing how I use the Confer app, I do have my school iPad with me after the session. I'm willing to share that with anyone interested in looking. Just don't judge my students too harshly. They really do try their best. So, organization for writing in the classroom. As I'm sure you noticed when you walked in, I'm a big fan of charts. The more colorful, the better. And basically the reason that we use different charts in our school is to help the students work independently, because a huge part of organization is setting your students up to do the work. Having the resources readily available and attractive so that they can problem solve and figure out what they need in the moment. This is also a really great way to help with differentiation. As you looked around the room today, I'm sure you noticed that each of these posters has many different post-it notes on it. They each are a different strategy. My personal favorite, and as a teacher I'm sure you've heard this as well, the thing that I hate most when students say to me, "How do you spell?" makes my blood boil. So I'm tired of answering that question, but I can't just leave students hanging. I'm a teacher, I need to help them. This is my absolute favorite chart in the entire world. And anytime I hear that question start, "How do you spell?" the finger goes up. That figured out. Try it out. I'm not worried if you're wrong. I'm worried that you did your best and tried your hardest. Because me telling you how to spell it doesn't teach you anything. You're not going to remember what I said. You're going to ask me the same question tomorrow. They always do. So these are different strategies that students can use. This is specifically for second grade, but our kindergarten, first, third, fourth grade teachers, they each have different strategies that they use that are grade level appropriate for their kids. And when a student is stuck, it's not just one thing. So for example, students' usual first go-to with trying to spell a word is to sound it out, to say it slowly. Terrible. They didn't get very far. So if that's a strategy that isn't helping them, they can try other strategies. They can use the room. Maybe there's words around the walls. Maybe it's on the word wall. Maybe they just didn't look. They came to me first. Maybe they should try it 3 ways. Sometimes when students write 3 ways, they can pick out which are the most wrong and the most right and go from there. But it gives them different strategies, and the best bit is if you teach to this poster and you make it with your students, they can do this on their own. So you've just set up an organizational system to answer what I consider to be one of the most frequent questions in a classroom. And now you've got an answer, and it's set up and it can stay up the entire school year as needed, and that pointing finger answers anytime you hear, "How do you spell?" The same thing goes for a lot of the other posters in the classroom. They provide different ways for students to answer their own questions. Now, you will need to direct them to it. They aren't magical like that. They don't just gravitate to the one that they need. But if you teach it and you do it one post-it at a time, you can get students into the routine and the habit of helping themselves, answering their own questions, or at least making the best effort to do so. All the answers in life are not on a poster, but a lot of them are. The other side to organization, obviously, is the nitty-gritty stuff. The how do you store your pencils? How do you store your paper? How do you make things accessible to students? I find the easiest way to do this in our school is to organize it by table. For kids that are older and can read, you can simply label it table 3, table 4, table Z, table giraffe, whatever you want to call it. For the younger students, specifically in KG1 and KG2, we use colors because that's something that they can identify. They're not going to get tripped up on words. They know they're the red table, and they can get anything that has the color red in front of it, like the red dot that you see in front of their pencils. They will always know which pencil cup belongs to them. The other thing that we tried to do is make it kid-friendly in that we provide examples of how they can use these resources. So for example, if we have a lot of writing paper out, which you can see there's many different styles, this is specifically for a nonfiction writing unit, there's examples of what students can do with it. So if they've forgotten how you taught them to draw a diagram and which paper choice to use, the example is there. The example that you did during your lesson is now stuck on the wall, and it provides them with the resource they need that answers their question, how do I? I know this seems a bit higher. Obviously, the writing samples on the wall are they're from a second grade classroom, so they're obviously for older students. But there's a lot of great ways to organize for little kids as well. Colors is one way. Cartoons and drawings is another. This is a writing paper selection in a kindergarten classroom, a KG1 classroom from Dubai American Academy. And I hope you can see this because my pictures aren't so amazing. But it's your basic IKEA paper storage system. And the kids have 3 choices. And the question they sort of think to themselves is, how much am I going to write today? What do I have to say? Is it a little bit? Is it a lot? Is it somewhere in between that? And so because they're not great readers in KG1, we've simply got, if you need a page that has 1 line on it, blah, you only have a little bit to say. If you have a little more than that to say, you'll pick up the number 2 where it says blah, blah. And of course, you guessed it, number 3, with 3 lines on the page for your KG students, blah, blah, blah. They know this system, they can use it. It's super cute and kid-friendly. It's got a little picture that goes with it. Who doesn't love it? I love it. I still want to use it with my second graders, but they're a little too cool for that. But again, simplicity and organization. You teach the kids how to use it. It doesn't require much setup. These are very crude, hand-drawn, curly-haired stick figures. Took probably less than a minute for this teacher to draw this. But you've set the system up, and now you're good to go. Your kids know how to use this. So far that's all been stuff that the teacher sets up and gets the students started with using. And then we come to the bane of most teachers' existences, the students' supplies, the things that they are personally responsible for, which usually, if you're not careful, end up in a big ball or stuffed in a folder, folded in half and squished into shapes that you didn't even know folders could be stretched into. So setting up your kids' folders for writing and having the resources all in one place is great. I have a policy in my classroom, as do many of the other teachers at Dubai American Academy, teacher hands off the kids' folders. We don't organize them, we don't touch them. I'll look at them when I'm assessing them, but I will never do it in front of my students unless I'm right there with a student. I'm not here to clean up after you, I'm not here to make your papers pretty, I'm here to teach you. And this is a struggle in the beginning of the year, and your kids will hate it, be prepared, but they will learn and realize that the beauty of their work, the nice corners, the proper organization depends on them and them alone. And it's a reflection of them when they pull a paper out of their folder, what does it look like? And so in order to help kids with that, because folders obviously can get very cluttered very quickly, even as adults, but shh, don't tell the kids that. We tried a system that we found was really effective. We have a green and a red. Basically, it's a traffic light system. Red means I've stopped working on this. I'm done for now. It doesn't mean I've stopped forever. It doesn't mean finished. Finished is a very dangerous word with little kids because when you say finished, they throw their hands up and they're never going to touch it again. We say we've stopped. The green side is I'm still going. And if you're noticing the former kindergarten teacher in me, we stopped, we're still going. And they take those cues very well. Also, the color system works at any age, with any age group. They understand that traffic light system. It's something they've been familiar with since they were very small. So it helps them stay organized, and you can ask them the prompting questions when you finish your writing lesson or your reading lesson for the day when they're looking at papers and trying to decide what to do with them. Have you stopped? Red. Are you still going? Green. And you can act it out if you like. The other thing that we keep in student folders are systems for problem solving. If you have a student who's struggling with spelling, stick a Paper Kids dictionary in the folder. The better you can keep kids at their desk, the better their writing will be. Their reading as well, but we'll get there in a second. Things like paper dictionaries, strategies for figuring out tricky words. If you want a student to do something like use more adjectives, write it on a Post-it note, stick it in the folder. If it's in the folder in front of them, kids are much more likely to use it. Another thing that I've done with a few of my students, because as much as I do love the posters, I do have those wandering students that go, oh yeah, poster, 10 minutes later, and they never come back to their seat. Photograph, stick it in their folder in a mini version. Oh, you seem to keep going to the spelling poster a lot. Here you go, now you don't have to get up anymore. It's right here anytime you need it. So the strategy is right there with them. It's the exact same strategy you taught, but they're not gonna waste that time anymore. I find that most of my students don't do that, but there's always that one really smart kid that kind of knows how to use these posters to his or her advantage. Those are the ones you gotta watch for, but we've got a system in place. Shrink it, and they can have it as their own anytime they need it. The other thing that's really important with organization that we believe in our school is the way we display student work. Not just in the sense that we do display it, because obviously we do, as do I imagine most schools, but that we have a system for display, in that within a classroom, students know when they begin a writing unit that their work will be on display and where it's going to be on display, that they have a real authentic audience and a purpose. And also that their work will be seen. It won't be shoved behind a bunch of other work in a folder. They know how we organize it as teachers. For the little guys, it may simply be putting sentence strips up on the wall, because that's all they can write at this point. For the older kids, it may be stapling a booklet up. It may be a book display case like you would see in a library where you can see the cover of everyone's writing. But the kids know my system as a teacher, and they know that expectation that your work will be organized on this display at the end of the unit. That's the expectation for them that I've given them. So they know what's coming. And that sense of routine really helps kids to prioritize and to think what is the most important. And also, who's my audience? Who's going to be looking at this work? When they know their parents are going to see it, it changes the game a bit for them. And of course, we have a policy that whenever students come into our school, it doesn't matter what their strategy is. The drawings that you see up in the corner there, that's from a KG1 class in September of this year. We tell them they're writers right from the beginning. Language is huge with kids, and if you tell them they're writers, you tell them they're readers, they're going to believe you because the teacher said so. They will question their parents in deference to what the teacher says. If you tell them the earth is flat, they will believe you. We are sort of the end-all and be-all when it comes to knowledge, sometimes much to parents' chagrin, but they really do trust us. They love us, they trust us. We're a parent figure for them in a sense from their earliest years. And usually what we do helps guide them, and they end up happy and healthy and better than they were when they started in the beginning of the school year. So if you say it, they'll believe it. And it's huge to get that mindset in, because you can help avoid some of those later struggles with some of your kids who say those horrible words. I can't write, I can't read. Yes, you can. You always can. You always could. So I'm going to switch over to reading now. And what I think you'll probably notice is that a lot of this looks the same. At Dubai American Academy, we run a very similar program for our reading and writing. We follow the reading and writing workshop that comes from Columbia University in New York City in the US. But even if you don't follow that model or have the Common Core standards like we do, all of this is very applicable to just about any system. When I first started doing this, I was not in Dubai, I was in the US, and I was not in a Common Core school. I was in a school down in Richmond, Virginia, who had a different set of standards. But a lot of the things that I'm showing you today are very applicable, no matter what curriculum you're working in. Getting kids to do their own thing and setting them up for success looks different in every school, and it looks different in every classroom. These have been harvested from a variety of classrooms, not just my own. I wish my classroom always looked like this. So reading, the same idea. Charts help students work independently. Everything from your simplest for the little kids, book, person, reading. That's it. It can be that simple. They understand what a plus sign and an equal sign means. We've got some things for second grade readers where they can actually read the Post-its and it's not as challenging for them. So you can put more words on there with little visual cues for them. The older kids get, the less visual cues you'll probably need, but it's always nice to have something visual on there because it's very engaging. I like pictures, I like colors, the kids do too. They like things that are bright. Most of my stuff is in neon here because it's very attractive. It also makes your classroom look a lot brighter. And it helps organize their ideas. For most of these posters, you'll notice each idea is on a different color so that it's concrete and distinct from the other ideas around it. It's not a flow. It's here's one idea, here's another strategy, or another idea. The classroom library. This can be the most amazing part of your classroom, or this can be the bane of your existence. It is one of those areas of your classroom where organization is so important and yet so challenging. There's many ways to organize a classroom library. I don't particularly subscribe to one right or wrong system. It depends on what your school works with. At DAA, we use the Fountas and Pinnell leveled library system, the letters of the alphabet, the A, B, C, all the way up through Z, American Academy. And so you'll see that in some of this, but you'll also see student favorite baskets, genre-based baskets, author baskets. Basically, you want to make your library exciting. If everything is in a level, no matter what your leveling system is, it's a system that pits kids against each other. That's not to say don't do it, but have some variety in there so your students are not always pigeonholed into their one single level. There's a place they can go that looks attractive and isn't just all about their academic achievement, because that's how they see it. They rank themselves based on their reading level, and their peers judge them based on their reading level. Not so much when they're real little, but the older they get, the more judgment they feel from external judgment from other students. So we want to try to temper that a bit by making the reading areas really accommodating and fun looking. If you're lucky enough to have some stuffed animals, one of the things that we've done at the school is we'll just talk to parents. Dubai is one of those communities where people come and go all the time, so they're constantly leaving and they don't want to take a 4-foot giraffe with them for some reason. I don't know. So they're more than willing usually to give us stuffed animals, things that their kids have loved, to make the reading corner or the library more kid-friendly and also more functional. If you plop a kid on a pillow, they'll stay there for a while. If you sit them at their desk bolt upright, they're going to keep wondering how they can get out of this. So the more comfortable, the more kid-friendly, the better. The other thing that we'll do is, with the older students, we'll stick some of these charts right in the book corner. So if you're sitting there reading, the resources are at your disposal. It's not meant to be a hide-and-seek game. These resources aren't meant to be hidden. They're there whenever you need them. Again, more of the organizational systems. This is some of the Fountas and Pinnell, although as you can see, the kids have played with the levels, and now we've got GHO. This is from a kindergarten classroom, students who were learning about different habitats, and just having it on display, it looks very attractive. What I like to do with my library, and what I think a lot of teachers do, is they put students in charge of it. I am lucky enough to have an assistant, bless her, she's amazing, but I have forbid her from cleaning up the library. She's not allowed to touch it. I don't touch it, she doesn't touch it. It's the children's responsibility. It's something that we check in with at the end of the day. I have 2 students assigned each week. At the end of the day, right before they go home, they go back into the library, or during the day, if they see a student who just tosses a book on the floor or sticks it on top of a shelf or doesn't put it back properly, they are my enforcers. I've taught them how to very politely say to students, "Excuse me, that's not where it goes," or "Excuse me, you need to put that away." And they're very good at that. They take a lot of pride in it, and the moment a student is called out by their peer for doing something, it's much more powerful than me correcting them, because they want to keep these friendships, and they also want to keep their friends happy. And part of that is respecting the resources in the classroom and keeping things copacetic among the peers. A little peer pressure for the better, if you will. So in reading, again, folder organizational systems. For some of your older students, we'll just use what we call them book baggies. They can be pretty much anything from a Ziploc bag to one of these fancy zippered bags you can get at Union Co-op or Carrefour or one of these stores around, just to keep the students' books all together. And I say books because there's always more than 2 or 3 in these baggies. And if we don't have enough books to support that, We'll print things off the internet, we'll get magazine clippings, newspapers, whatever reading materials we can to stock up these baggies, because the idea is when students start their independent reading, we don't want them up, down, up, down, up, down. As soon as a student is out of their seat, learning is done until they are back in it, and that could take some serious time. So we've helped them set up an organizational system where once a week they bookshop. They can take whatever books, reading materials, resources they're going to read, anything from poetry to just write books, to a read aloud that we've done that week, to a magazine article that they've gotten, to a book from home, to something about the social studies unit we're doing, and it all goes into one place. And that is theirs for the week, and they don't get to keep going back and forth to the library. The second purpose of this, of course, is that it helps keep your library neat. If you only have 6 students that bookshop on Monday, if the library is a mess, your library person knows exactly which students they need to go get and send back to the library to clean it up. It's not a mystery who messed up the library. So it helps keep them responsible and organized, and it also keeps them engaged in their reading. One of the other ways that we help keep students engaged with their pile of books is when they set up for reading. It's not just reach in and decide and play around with the books. The first thing they do when they get their book baggie is they set themselves up for success. They put the books in a pile of whatever order they're going to read them. They make those decisions first. They're in one pile so that when they finish the first book, it's no longer a 5-minute decision. What am I going to read next? They finish the first one. Oh, I already decided this one's next. Boop. And it helps you get that smoothness and that fluency going in their process because they aren't wasting that time. I know all these things sound sort of silly and simple, but they were things that I never thought of for a long time. And now that I do a lot of them, it saves me a minute here, a minute there, and it does actually add up over time. For your younger students, just having the folder to organize, because some of those books, I'm sure Pat and Pam is riveting, but it probably has no more than 20 words, 30 words in it. It's going to be quick for kids. So they can very quickly move across, I will read, I read. And they can organize themselves that way. Even your youngest students can do that. They can put them in order on one side, in the order they're going to read them, and just go. With little kids, especially with books like this that don't really have that depth of plot and excitement for them, this is positive because it helps them see their progress within the piles of books. These are just a few more examples. These are specifically from a KG2 classroom. Again, having resources that support kids in their folders. The less they get out of their seat, again, the better off you're going to be, the better off they're going to be. This is actually a kid favorite in KG2. It looks really fancy, but it's a popsicle stick painted yellow with a piece of purple paper taped or glued to the top of it. It is a reading pointer. And this student is doing a great reading job because they're pointing as they read. And in KG, that's so important for kids to point along as they read. But this is so much more fun than your finger. So much more fun. And when you have it in your hand, you feel really important. And they're a teacher now because they too are pointing. And they too have this power to read and to point along with the words and to get engaged with it. It's exciting. When you open your book baggie or your book folder and you have something in there and you're like, yes, immediately. But in order to use it, you have to be reading. The other thing, again, same as writing, we try to stick tools in there that will help kids. What you see on the far side there, it says stuck, try, and then there's a list of strategies. Each one has an animal that goes with it. Specifically KG, they love animals. They can remember, say it slow like Sammy Snake. They'll remember that. But again, having it in there so that whenever they need it, it's there. It's not a mystery. They don't have to ask you for help. They can try different strategies on their own before they resort to getting out of their seat or moving from their reading spot. So these are just some of the tips and tricks, things that you've probably heard me say many times in this presentation. You want to set your students up for success. You want to keep it positive. You want to do things that are going to help them be successful. It's not about things that you think most of your kids could do, but some will fail at. We don't want that. The moment they feel failure in this, they're going to become belligerent, they're not going to want to listen to you, and they're going to do worse because they're going to dislike their own abilities. We want them to be successful, which is why we include a variety of strategies on each of the different charts and posters that you see here, and also strategies within their folder. If they're stuck with a tricky word and they can't read it, and their strategies are right there in their folder, no one else sees that they're stuck. That embarrassment of not knowing a word, even at the lowest levels, is now gone because they can figure it out without getting out of their seat, and no one knows what they're doing within their own little space. They're going to be successful because you set them up to be successful. You put the resources on the walls that you taught them to work with that. You put the right things in their folder. You met with students to see what does this student need. Their folders shouldn't be full of every single poster in a photograph that you have. They won't use them and they'll just get ruined. It's a waste of your time and a waste of their space. Be specific. What does this individual student need? Use those differentiation skills. Figure it out. Talk to your kids. For most of us, this will be pretty quick. You'll walk up and you'll look at their writing and go, whoa, spelling. And you'll go and grab the poster that you need. For some kids, it'll be a little bit trickier. For some of them, a whole poster may be too challenging. You may just want one Post-it. Here's what I want you to try. Anytime you can't spell a word, try this strategy out. One thing only. And then you can help build up their bank. It's going to be kid dependent. What is that kid capable of doing and what isn't going to overwhelm that child? If you overwhelm them, again, they're not going to want to do it. So my mantra for all of this, set them up for success, wherever their success level may be. This goes for your struggling readers and writers and your exceeding readers and writers, because you don't want to let them just slack off because they, in theory, are meeting your standards. Set yourself up for success. Not all of this happened in a day. I am not a magic teacher. I didn't just pull it all out. This is a compilation of working with some other amazing teachers and combining resources. Talk to your team, talk to your family, talk to your friends. My poor husband doesn't know how much he's contributed to this. Actually, he probably does. He spends a lot of time listening to my ideas. He's a bit of a sounding board. But you'd be amazed the ideas people have, especially people that don't think like you. They're some of my favorite teachers, teachers that do not think about things the way that I do. I seek those people out because they see the world a bit differently than me, and they can help figure out the successful bits of my ideas, what they think may or may not work, and also their own ideas. This is really, what you're seeing is a collaboration of a lot of brilliant teacher minds coming together. Being creative. So a lot of what you've seen here looks really expensive. Beautiful plastic buckets and shelving and this, that, and the other. Things simple as the box top from a ream of paper that comes for the printers. They're a tray for everything in my classroom. They organize absolutely everything. The boxes that the papers come in, empty tissue boxes for pencils, pencil shavings. Be creative. It does not have to be top of the line expensive resources. They're out there, and there are a lot of people who really want to sell you these things. They're beautiful, they're colorful. They're not particularly any better than anything else, and to be honest, a lot of them won't last as long as a cardboard box, except the cardboard box didn't cost you anything. So be creative. My students throw pencils that are not sharpened in a tissue box that I've cut the top off of. That's the unsharpened box. If a point breaks, don't waste your time sharpening it. That's not a good use of your student time. Please don't bother my assistant. She's helping other students learn. Stick it in the box, grab one out of the sharpened box, and move on. Don't waste time with pencils, or they'll waste all their time with pencils. But again, having it set up, and it's 2 tissue boxes that I use. Getting the kids involved. So some of the most brilliant Post-its on these charts are kid thought of, where I've said, okay, 2nd grade writers don't say, how do you spell? What do you guys do when you don't know how to spell a word? And they will say things that I never thought of because it's what they're doing. And some of them are brave enough to share with you what they're doing without the fear of you saying, that's not right. And so the kids are a great resource for this because these are the things they're actually doing. They're not going to spend their time making up a strategy that they're not going to use. They're going to tell you what they really do. The ones that don't probably aren't doing anything, or they're too afraid to tell you what they do. But your kids are a great resource. My kids helped me with the sharpened pencils thing. It was driving me crazy because they would be fishing and fishing and fishing and fishing for a pencil with a point. It would make all this noise because, of course, they all rattle together. And my patience is wearing thin as I'm trying to teach you something. And they were like, well, why don't we just put the unsharpened ones in a box? And then once they're sharpened, they could go in another box and we can just get them when we need them. Light bulb. So simple. And now my assistant, the students, whomever, can sharpen these pencils anytime because there's plenty of them and we know which ones are good, which ones are not. Quick, painless, and kid-generated. Be prepared for ups and downs. It never ends. As teachers, I'm sure you know this. It never goes perfectly, but usually it doesn't go terribly, horribly wrong either. Be patient with yourself. These are beautiful, but they take time. The systems you've seen here take time. Sometimes a system works amazingly well in one classroom, and it is an epic failure in your own classroom. That's okay. Pick up, try again. Try something new, try something different. You've seen a variety of different things up on the board here and up on the charts here, because the same strategy that works in one place doesn't always work in another. Your group of students, you as a teacher, you're very different from the next group of students in your school and their teacher. So use what works for you, but be prepared that not everything is going to work, and that's okay. My rule of thumb is one new thing a week. Any more than that, and I'm gonna overwhelm myself. And if that sounds even too much, one new thing a month, depending on the size of what your new thing is. If your new thing is sharpened and unsharpened pencils, that's pretty quick. Get your boxes set up, you're good to go. But if you're working with charts, that's gonna take you some more time. Be patient with yourself, but don't give up. All right, that's all I've got for you today. I hope that you were able to find something that you can take home, something that sparked your interest.